Okay, hello everybody. This morning I had a really quick dream, which I want to really quickly share. I called it cutbacks. I called it cutbacks. So I'll just get into it. So at first there was just a lot of confusion, or things seemed out of control. I was in my sleep and I just had this something was wrong, and I was upset about it. And then it started to be more orderly. So whatever was happening started to become a little bit more orderly. And the solution to whatever was that happened was cutbacks. So businesses started cutting back. There was one business in my dream that made some cutbacks, and then there was a man from another business, and he was saying that what he was going to be cutting back, he was going to be cutting back by ending his social media presence. And specifically, he was talking about Facebook. There are different ways that you can pay Facebook to promote your post and your online things and market through Facebook. So he was specifically talking about that. And he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna cut my online Facebook presence and scale back or end my marketing strategies using Facebook, and like we're gonna ride this out and everything's gonna be fine." And that was the type of attitude he had. But like I said, from the beginning of the dream, something was very bad. Like I was very out of sorts. Like it was a problem. Like I remember being restless and even worried. And then the answer got a little bit orderly, like, "Oh, we're just gonna make some cutbacks." And this one specific guy, he was saying, "I'm just gonna, yeah, but things are tightening up a little bit. The way I'm gonna fix it in my budget is I'm just gonna cut out my spending on my marketing and online presence on the Facebook. And that's going to solve my problems. It's going to alleviate my cash flow pinch, and everything will be fine." So he was very calm, but that did not match what I felt had happened. So this is what I wrote afterwards. It was like he had no idea how bad things would become. And how what they thought was the bottom was really just the beginning. Now, this is what I mean by that. When you talk about the bottom, you have a market or an industry that becomes economically unstable. You can think of a stock price, and it's riding along and you're invested in it. You bought it at this price and it's worth this much, and it keeps traveling along. So something happens and the bottom falls out. That's what they call the bottom falling out of a market or a product. And so the bottom falls out, and you're thinking of like a graph or some sort of a graphic to illustrate what it cost. Say this line here is $50, and $50 is up to here, and that represents this line here going across time. So it's worth 5, 10, 15, 20, $50. And then in January, it's worth $50. March, April, and then June, it goes down to maybe $40. July is down to $30. And then maybe in August, it's all the way down to $10, say $10 a share. That's what they call the bottom has fallen out. Things don't usually drop like that. They usually go like this. They wake up one morning and bam, the bottom fell out. That's what they call the bottom fell out of it. It didn't take a slow curve downward. It just was like bam. You woke up the next day and you were broke because you had all your money invested in this thing. So when they call it the bottom, because these things usually just go in cycles like that. Like the economy just moves in cycles. Things crash, and then they slowly build back up again. People get all carried away and they crash. And people make money because they timed these crashes. They watch what's happening and they get out before the bottom falls out. And then when the bottom is out and the price is very low, then they'll buy more of it. And then people get confident again and they start entering back into that market and the price rises up again. And they are like, yeah, these things go in cycles. I see this happening. I'm jumping off. I'm selling my shares or selling my house or whatever while these prices are high, because I know inevitably from the signs that are present, the bottom is going to fall out again. So that's where our things like our housing market are. Prices way up in the stratosphere that nobody can afford. So you can anticipate the rising interest rate would make a tip over point and the things are going to fall out. If I had a house, I'd probably be selling it right now. That's if you have somewhere to go. If I had 2 houses maybe, because you got to buy another one with a high interest rate. So that's got to financially make sense for you. But if you were ever thinking about, gee, this house is worth so much more than it was when I bought it and I want to cash out, if that's something that you were thinking about doing, this might be a good time to do it, because all the signs are there that the bottom is going to fall out. And it happens so quickly, because when people see that, when they see the prices falling, it creates a panic to sell. And this is where the Great Depression came from, that was triggered by the stock market crash, the Black, what's it called? Black Friday or Black Tuesday or Black Friday or whatever it was called, where everybody just went into a panic and everybody started selling and the prices just went boom, so that's how the housing market works. I bought a house in the 2008 economy crash because the government lured people back into the market, lured people back into buying houses. And the way they did it, there was this first-time home buyers credit, which you didn't even really have to be a first-time home buyer. You just had to have not purchased a house within the past 3 years. I happen to have never purchased a house, so I did it. And they give you, I think it was $7,500 credit on your next tax return. So I did that. But what the government was doing was propping up the housing market, bringing buyers into the market to keep it from going down to the bottom where it really needed to go. So it wasn't at the bottom yet. Prices were falling and the government wanted to get them stabilized to keep it from going swoop. They wanted to stabilize them. So to do that, you stop all those people from jumping off the ship and say, hey, this is a good time to buy. I'll, give you $7,500 at the end of next year. Just come by now. So I fell for it. I was very unsophisticated, naive, all that. So I bought a house. Now, wouldn't you know, people are saying this was the bottom. This price, a little bit of a price fall was the bottom. Interest rates were rising. And, this is a good time to buy these. But it wasn't the bottom. The prices kept on falling. And I sold that place for an unbelievable loss because they fell and then they began to rise very slowly. And you make money or lose money, not that this is good, by selling up here, buying down here and selling up here while the price is high. But the guesswork comes in, how do you know? What if this was the bottom? But it wasn't the bottom. They kept on falling. And they had just started recovering in 2014 when I sold it. But little did I know they were going straight back through the roof again, where they are now. The same place that I had to sell for $75,000. Right now, today, I'm going to look it up right now. I have talked about this before, how I got burned in the housing market. Let's see what they're selling for. This hurts, guys. This hurts. This hurts. Looking at this. All right, I'm going to look. I'm going to look at a comparable place because that's what they base real estate prices on. They call them comps. It stands for comparables. All right, so let's look. This is so infuriating. No, it's not. I'm over it. I'm over it. All right, so here's one. A 3-bedroom, which mine was a 3-bedroom. See if I can find one on my street was for sale. Guys. So this is a 2-bedroom, 3-bath. No. 2-bedroom, 2-bath. Smaller than mine. And a 1-car garage. I had a 2-car garage. I had an end unit, which you all know is very coveted when it comes to condominiums. You don't want to be sandwiched in between 2 neighbors. Okay, here's one that's just like a street away. This is a 3-bedroom. Mine was a 3-bedroom. This has more bathrooms than I did, but whatever. $242,000. $242,000. When I sold my condo, I couldn't even get $75,000 for the appraisal. It appraised for $73,000 and the buyer had to give me $2,000 in a side deal to purchase the appliances. That is how many times? At least triple. Divided by 73. Over 3 times the price. That place went through the roof. It went through the roof. Now, had I still owned it, and had I still been sitting there, that's what I would have been able to sell my condo for. So you don't know. It's a guessing game when you're trying to time what you're going to do. Am I going to buy? Am I going to sell? Are we on the uprise? Is this a downfall? So that's the way it was in this dream. This guy was thinking, oh, I'm just going to stop paying for my Facebook ads, and that's going to fix my budget issues. You know, it'll be fine. I just need to cut back a little bit, and that'll fix it all. But so like I said, they were thinking it was the bottom. But it wasn't the bottom. This wasn't the bottom. So if they think this is the bottom, what they mean is the bottom of the curve that it's going to take. This is the bottom, and it's going to start rising back up. That's the lowest price that they're going to be at. This is the worst things they're going to get right here. But like I said, it was only the beginning. So they're not preparing for the worst. They're not actually prepared for the realism of the situation. So, this is my neighbor. This is the house that's for sale right next to what my house was. I think. Yeah, I think so. Anyway. And that's the small unit. I had the big unit. Here's a small unit for sale that somebody just went under contract. And they just went under contract for $170,000. $170,000. No, 180,000. And that is basically sold. So it's a comparable is one thing what people are asking for their house, but a comparable comes from what people are actually getting for their house. So they're still getting these type of prices for these places. And I lost my shirt because when I bought it, it was worth maybe 115. And I have to estimate because I bought a foreclosure and I bought it way below the market. But little did I know what I was thinking was the bottom. The foreclosures are supposed to be the bottom of the barrel, but it wasn't the bottom. It was only the beginning of what was going to happen to those prices. And like I said, they slashed more than half after I bought that place. Anyway, that's my lesson that I learned that I'm sharing with you. You have to know where things are overall. And where we are overall is inside what is called a housing bubble. Bubbles are always artificially created, and they are forces or influences that enter into a market of some kind, whether it's the housing market, the car market, if you're wood, coffee beans, whatever you're selling, there's a market for it. There are people who produce it and there are people who use it. And things can come in and affect that balance between the sellers and the users. And that balance between the sellers and the users is what determines price. So when you do things like offer tax incentives to buy homes, you affect the balance, and that's going to affect price. If you offer, they're doing it right now with electric vehicles. The government is affecting the market for electric vehicles, which is going to artificially affect the price. So the government is giving people money to buy electric vehicles in the form of tax credits. So that's going to send the demand for electric vehicles up, which is also going to send the price of electrical vehicles up. Demand and price go together. High demand, high price. Low demand, low price. If I have this cell phone, and nobody wants this cell phone, but if somebody did want this iPhone 7, if there's only one person and I say, give me $200 for this cell phone, they're like, no way. I can get a new one for way less than that. Now, let's say something happens. The Verizon store closes down. Now they can't buy a new one. Now all of a sudden, now you want my phone, right? So I was going to sell it to you for $250. Let's try $3. And you're like, okay. So that's how things can affect a market. Let's say there was a shipment of iPhones on the way over here from China, and the boat hit an iceberg and sank. And for the next 2 months, there's going to be a shortage of phones. You dropped your phone. You need one now. You might be more interested in this phone. Or the government says, we're going to put a tax on new phones. All of a sudden, nobody's looking to buy new phones anymore. So now my old phone is worth more. All kinds of things like that can happen. What happened in the housing market, how the government ruined the prices of houses and made them totally out of line with what people can actually afford. This is what they did. It was a little thing called HUD. And you got these HUD loans where they're giving loans to people who the banks would normally say, you're not a good credit risk. I'm not going to loan you money for you to buy a house because you're very likely to default on that loan. So what the government does is they come in and they guarantee these loans. They guarantee to these banks that if that person doesn't pay the loan, I'll pay it. So the bank is like, okay, I get to charge them all this interest. And if they don't pay me, you're going to pay me? Come on, I'll write your loan. And since you're a higher risk, well, never mind. We won't go into that. They got this is something called prime, subprime loans, where people who are high risk, you charge them even more money. So anyway, so that brought a whole bunch more people to looking to buy houses. And when those people who were already in those houses began to sell their houses, now they're looking to upgrade. So now that's even more clients for the bank, because generally when you sell a house, you buy a house. So that's 2 loan originations for banks, and they're all for that. So this is how the government came in, probably prompted by bribes from the banks to do this, to go in and artificially stimulate the housing market to affect demand. When demand goes up, price goes up. That's what happened in 2016. That's what's happening after the pandemic. And it was already happening. We were already in a housing bubble in 2016, and the government was constantly doing things to just keep it going. Like, I bought in a down market, but what I thought was the bottom was just the beginning, and I lost my shirt on that house. So, let me make sure I said everything. Oh, so after I thought about that dream when I woke up, I said, wow, I'm gonna, and I just like instantly thought this. I wasn't even really thinking about it. I'm gonna cancel my gym membership. And then as soon as I said that, I was like, oh, that's what's going to start it. That's what's going to start it. Everybody's going to have an inkling like that. Oh, I'm going to stop doing it. Just like this guy. I'm going to cut my Facebook budget for my advertising. Everybody's going to cut back. And then in all that cutting back, that's what's going to trigger the disaster. We're already set up for it. That's not the cause of it. And it's not our fault for cutting back. But the need to cut back is what is going to cause the bottom to fall out of everything. And it's going to be like dominoes. One area is going to feel the pinch. And then the people who work in that industry are going to get layoffs. It's going to start with layoffs because people cut back. And then that industry has to lay off. They got to tighten up, save a little bit of money for other things, and save for a rainy day. You never know what's going to happen. Things are uncertain. And all that holding back, all that cutting back is going to affect industries. And then the industries that depend on those industries are going to cut back. Just like how our economy was totally transformed in ways that people did not figure and count on when they took all the factories overseas. When they took the factories to Mexico and Vietnam and Sri Lanka and China and Korea, and what people weren't really thinking is how did the middle class disappear? Well, some of those factory workers were very, very well paid. And for every factory worker and all those factories, they need secretaries. It's not just the fact that we're not making tennis shoes here. It's the fact that those companies that were here that have bookkeepers, secretaries, janitors, lawyers, all the other things that go along with running a business, office furniture, all kinds of stuff you're not buying anymore because that thing's not here. All of it is shrinking the economy. So that's why, and I had a dream a long time ago, 4 or 5 years ago, I don't know, where the economy fell, and it was like dominoes. It began in one area, and then boom, 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 boom. What was happening in one area caused the downfall of all the other areas. Okay, I think that was what I wanted to say. Yeah, I guess that was it. economic collapse. And not only that, speaking of dominoes, it could start in America and go all over the world because things are kind of interconnected. Things are interconnected now because we don't make so much of what we use. And when they start laying people off, people are not going to buy what they used to buy. And those things are made in other places. And then those other places are going to start to experience. Then those other places are going to start to experience the same thing. So it's like once it starts, it just snowballs from there. Being the next thing being caused by the thing that just happened right before that. And then that causes, and then that causes, and then that causes, and then that causes. All right. Can't think of anything else. Cutbacks. And the cutbacks will lead to the collapse that we all know is coming. And let's read a scripture about it. Let's read a scripture out of Genesis. Not Genesis. Not Exodus either. Revelation. Revelation. And let's go to chapter 18. Because we are Babylon. All right. Verse 1 says, "And after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies." How you can just think of something that you want, go on Amazon, type it in, and somewhere in another country, somebody gets busy. It gets on a boat or on a plane or however it gets here, and then next thing you know, somebody's throwing it on your doorstep, and your ring goes off. Ding dong. You get a notification on your phone. Your package has arrived. Thank you for shopping at Amazon. All that is gonna change. All that convenience is the bait. It says, verse 4, "And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities." The love of money is the root of all evil. The things that make this economy go are evil. And the love of money are the root of that evil, all the way down to the way the money itself materializes. A couple weeks ago, I had a dream about the World Bank. Some person that I considered hopelessly clueless about end time events in my dream was asking a question saying, what is the World Bank? I guess she must have, in the dream, she must have seen like a YouTube video about the World Bank, and she was kind of confused, like, what is the World Bank? Now, no, none of these sleeping Christians would ever ask what the World Bank is because they don't know. They just know that they can look at their bank account and with the press of a finger or showing their face, they can know exactly how much money. They haven't touched a dollar and they don't know when. But actually where the money comes from and what it means and how does the love of money become the root of all evil? What even is money? How does the exploitation of a child in Sri Lanka relate to me being able to dial up Amazon and get Sharpies delivered to my door. There's a direct relationship with how these things happen, how our economic system benefits in even a more sinister way than what slavery was back in the days. One person is rich because they go capture another person and make that person do all their work. We're a little bit more sophisticated in some ways with it now, with our complicated economic policies and all that stuff. But it's no less a sham and an obvious travesty against justice, human nature, fairness, and something that makes God's anger boil over. And it's hard to believe that what we think of as evil, we want to think of things as evil like fornicators, like from Malachi, where God upbraided the men that were leaving their wives, abandoning the wife of their youth. We want to think of it as murderers, liars, and all that, and all those things are sinful, but not realizing how concerned about money God is, because the love of money is what is causing all these other miseries. The lifestyle that people want to set up for themselves automatically locks other people into a miserable lifestyle. It creates the circumstance where, a mother needs to be out of the home to help provide because of all of these complicated financial scams that are brought about by the love of money, and how those things go on to create not some, but all of the misery in the world. Money. Not the love of ice cream, the love of money. Okay, let me read this real quick. James says this. And make sure I get a King James version because I like that. It says in James chapter 5, verse 4. Let's read verse 1. James chapter 5, verse 1. Go to now, you rich men. Come on, rich men. Weep and howl for your miseries that shall come upon you. All the people, the reason why they benefit from the cycles of the bottom and the rising and the ups and the downs and the buying high and selling low and all that. No, the buying low and selling high, while at the same time they get you to buy high and sell low. And they seem to time the climb and their selling and all that stuff. They seem to time it with perfect timing. Why? Because they cause the cycles. They cause them on purpose to take advantage of them. They pay the news to mention their products and make it seem like a news story for you to think this is the latest and the greatest thing for you to invest in. Buy Tesla stocks, buy Bitcoin, and they time it, they create it. They say on this day, we're going to release this information that's going to crash Bitcoin. On this day, we're going to release this information that's going to give everybody confidence and make them go out and buy Bitcoin. And when they're buying, I'm selling. Demand goes up, so does price. And then I'm going to start a rumor. And I'm going to dump my shares. And somebody's going to be left holding the bag. Like in 2008, when everybody lost their retirement accounts. because it was all tied up in the stock market. The people who knew what was going to happen made a killing. The people who didn't lost their shirts, because the whole system is just a highly manipulated fraud. There's nothing accidental about it. It's a monetary system, completely and totally manipulated to make people rich. It's a fraudulent system of money. Oh, that's what I was saying, the World Bank. The dream of the person that was talking about the World Bank, which of course prompted me to go look into the World Bank, which I'm going to look more into. But it's basically the banking elite, Jewish banking families. And it's basically the heart of our fraudulent money system. And there was a lady who made, let me see what her name was. She made a video. What was her name? Whatever her name was. She so-called exposed the banking industry. She's the one who started the expose of the Federal Reserve. And everybody, we all know about the Federal Reserve, not right? Basically, everybody on this channel, you probably know all about the Federal Reserve, their fraudulent money system, and how our money is created as debt that is owed by us, and where all our taxes go. And instead of leaving our wealth within our country, it's all spirited away in interest payments for money that we don't even have to borrow, but our government has the constitutional right to just issue the money. But instead they choose to borrow it, and lots of it. Anyway, that's probably gonna have to be a whole different video about the World Bank. But that's what's controlling everything. If you really want to know, how are they controlling the world? Through money. If the love of money is the root of all evil, and we have this being, this creature and his armies and hosts and servants, and the love of money is the root of all that evil, where else would he be but a bank? Where else would he be? All right. So James chapter 5 verse 1 says, "Go to now, you rich men, weep and howl for your miseries that shall come upon you. Your riches are corrupted, and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and your silver is cankered, and the rust of them shall be a witness against you, and shall eat your flesh as it were fire. Ye have heaped up treasures together for the last days." So here we are in the last days. They might not know it, but they are in the last days. And they have perfected this system to the point where they can just get money just by the heaps. Verse 4 says, "Behold, the hire of your laborers," which means the wages of the people who work for you, who have reaped down your fields, which is of you kept back by fraud. The wages are kept back by fraud. We have a fraudulent monetary economic system in place in the United States and all over the world. Through the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund have spread this thing all over the world. Through central banks and all that stuff. So the hire of your workers, the wages that should be going to your workers, which you are keeping through your frauds, is crying. Crieth, the Bible says. And the cries of them which have reaped, your workers, are entered into the ears of the Lord of the Sabbath. God is concerned about money. God is concerned about our lives. I came that you might have life and that you might have it more abundantly. So he's going to remove all of those things that have created this system that's responsible for not some, but all of the evil. You hate school. You hate your job. You hate the fact that you can never get ahead, you can never own anything. It's because there's a system in place. And God hates it. Verse 5 says, and this is so related to chapter 18 of the book of Revelation. Verse 5 says, ye have lived in pleasure on the earth and been wanton. Wanton is just like reckless evil. You just evil. Ye have nourished your hearts as in a day of slaughter. Now, what does that mean? Remember when the prodigal son came back to his father, and the father looked and saw him coming down the road and took off after him to greet him? And he said to his servants, kill the fatted calf. My son that was lost is back home again. So, as in a day of slaughter, when you kill an animal to have a feast. So it says you have nourished your hearts as in a day of slaughter. Like when they slayed 5 bullocks. So there was filet mignon for everybody. Verse 6. Ye have condemned and killed the just, and he doth not resist you. Verse 7. Be patient, therefore, brethren, unto the coming of the Lord. Behold, the husbandman waiteth for the precious fruit of the earth, and have long patience for it, until he receive the early and the latter rain. Be ye also patient, establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord draweth nigh. This is important. Verse 9 says, grudge not one against another, brethren, lest ye be condemned. Behold, the judge standeth before the door. Grudge not one against another. Say, we'll know them. The way people will know that we're Christ's disciples. By this shall all men know that you're my disciples, that you have love one for another. So if there's no love going on, and there's other things other than love going on, love amongst the brethren, and you got bitter strife and envyings, there's a problem. You're thinking something that's not true, and that's that you're going to go with the Lord. But there should be love. There should be care for one another, mercy towards one another, grace towards one another, and a desire to restore people who have gone out of the way. Not to just, make a video about them and trash them. That's not what God wants from us. Okay, so back to Revelation chapter 18. I'm going to read fast. Verse 1. And after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened by his glory, with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. Foul, foul, foul. Crooked, perverse, corrupt, fraudulent. And then it says, for all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her sins, and that you receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. How she got rich? Fraud and sin. They love money so much they did every manner of wickedness to build it up. Verse 6 says, reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her double according to her works. In the cup which she hath filled, Fill to her double, O ye rich men. Weep and howl. Verse 7, this is the big one. How much she hath glorified herself. Think about what you see on TV these days. And live deliciously. Housewives of Atlanta. And live deliciously. So much, yes, I said it. So much torment and sorrow give her. For she hath in her heart, for she hath said in her heart, I sit, you could take any one of them ladies. I sit a queen. Housewives of anything. And am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judgeth her. The bottom is going to fall out. All in one day, just trouble. And the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her. So how did the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, how did they manage to get this financial grip? How did the elite bankers and the Jewish elite banking families who are not genetically Jewish, they are not even religiously Jewish. I had a dream, I'm going to have to make a separate video about it, but I had a dream that what happened, it was something was spoken about this guy, that he had become a Jew. And what that meant was he had converted over to Judaism in order to take economic advantage of the privileges of membership, in order to just be on side. I would never be able to find it right now, but that's what happened. So, and that's the people who you see up in high places now. That's generally how they're Jewish. They don't ascribe to the Torah. They don't descend from Abraham, and neither would they even know if they did, because there's no records. And all it is just kind of, they just join up. They become converts, and then they kind of like joining a club. And then all of a sudden in my dream, this guy, he became Jewish, and all of a sudden he, things started moving and shaking in his life, and he became rich. He became wealthy. So, So when the kings of the earth who have committed fornication with her, what that means is these banking systems, these banking cartels, these central banks, what they do with the IMF and the World Bank and all that stuff, they go in and they indebt these nations, these developing nations, used to be known as third world nations. In other words, they don't live the technologically advanced and far removed from reality life that we live here, where day and night doesn't matter, where winter, summer, spring, and fall don't matter, because you got your AC and your furnace. You got the grocery store where you don't have to work during the summer and the fall, the harvest time. And then you got to preserve all those things and store up for the winter. We don't know anything about all of that. We live detached from the signs and the seasons that the Lord left and the times. And our reality comes from the little screens and boxes that we watch instead of real reality, which is why we're not in touch with what time it is. Jesus said you'll know that summer is near because, the trees are budding and this, that, and the other thing is happening. But we don't live that lifestyle. So those third world nations who were living still that lifestyle, even in modern times. So the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, and the World Bank go over there. This is how they spread this whole system everywhere. They put up figurehead leaders and they say, we want you guys to participate in democracy. You're going to have progress. You're going to have a progressive nation. You're going to move forward you're not going to be a backward nation anymore. Backward would be their traditions and their villages and the life that they had literally carried on for thousands of years, sustaining their own selves. They create violence and instability within these countries by giving thugs guns, warlords and all that stuff. Give them guns, terrify everybody. Then we need to run them off the villages and where they can't live their self-sustaining lifestyle, run them all into the cities with promises of factory jobs and progress, and you're going to be just like the U.S. and we're a developing nation. We're developing out of the third world into a first world nation, blah, 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 blah. And they sell all this stuff to these people. You need to vote in democracy, vote for this leader. He's going to be democratic. He has clout and inroads with the West. They give him money. The International Monetary Fund, they loan money to these countries so they can develop and become just like us, because it's just that easy, right? And so what happens is they lose their old way of life. They lose the ability to go back to it like we have. And the leaders that they have propped up just take the money as payoffs. And now the people are indebted to the International Monetary Fund, who now come in and dictate policies there in those countries. And we can't snicker at them because the same thing has happened to us. The International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and all this stuff, it's the same people who run the Federal Reserve. And our leaders took payoffs to sell us away to the Federal Reserve and the international banks and the international banking families. And now we owe so much money to we don't even know who, and trying to borrow our way out of being borrowed to death. And the whole world is just going to collapse into financial insolvency because of runaway spending, hyperinflation, and debt. And then the person who holds the mortgage is going to pop up one day and say, I got you. So that's how the kings of the earth who have committed fornication with her and lived deliciously with her. They take this so-called backward nation, take this one guy, pay him off. He speaks for the whole country, sells away their mineral rights, and just gives the West or China or whoever wants it free access to go into that country and do whatever they want, make whatever policies they want. And then here's the misery that we live in. Now we're up under the agenda for this and that. Like my nephew calls them the alphabet people. LGBTQCAT. That's the cat children. So those are the kings that have lived deliciously with her, who have betrayed their people. They shall bewail her and lament for her when they shall see the smoke of her burning. When America goes up in flames, the destruction of our cities will be seen on screens all across the world. Standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come. And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise anymore. The merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones and of pearls and fine linen. See, no, not that we are making gold, silver, precious stones, pearls, fine linen, but we're the purchasers of those things. Purchasers of those things. Because we've been given the first right to borrow. Which is another principle that makes fake money worth more. When you're the first one to spend the created money out of thin air. Oh, another story. So they're weeping and wailing and mourning, all these merchants of the earth, because nobody's buying their gold and silver and precious stones that they're digging up in these third world countries without giving the third world country any of it, except for the leader who gets his piece broken off. And silk and scarlet and fine wood and all manner of vessels of ivory and all manner of vessels of most precious wood and of brass and of iron and marble and cinnamon and odors and ointments and frankincense and wine and oil and fine flour and wheat and beasts and sheep and horses and chariots and slaves and souls of men. There's not a thing on this list that you can't buy here in America. Not a thing on this list. And they might not call him a slave. But there are people who are not at liberty to quit their jobs because of the economic situations that they're in. And there's probably some real for real slaves too. And the fruit that thy soul lusted after are departed from thee. And all things which were dainty and goodly are departed from thee, and thou shalt find them no more at all. The merchants of these things which were made rich by her shall stand afar off for the fear of her torment, weeping and wailing and saying, Alas, alas, that great city that was clothed in fine linen and purple and scarlet and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls. For in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught, nothing. And every shipmaster and all the company in ships and sailors, as many as trade by sea, stood afar off. And they cast dust on their heads and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, Alas, alas, that great city, wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea by reason of her costliness. Those markets. Stuff that's worth nothing in their country. They couldn't get a nickel for it. Bring it over here. Slap some fancy advertising on it and put it in a cute little box. And somebody will shoot somebody over it. A pair of shoes. Sell a boy for a pair of shoes. For in 1 hour is she made desolate. Rejoice over her, thou heaven, and ye holy apostles and prophets, for God hath avenged you on her. And a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and cast it into the sea, saying, Thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. And the voice of harpers and musicians and pipers and trumpeters shall be heard no more at all in thee. No more concerts, no more Beyonce and Jay-Z concerts. No, they're not interested in entertaining you anymore while they lure you into a trap. There's no more of that. None of that shall be heard no more at all in thee. And no craftsman of whatsoever craft he be shall be found any more in thee. And the sound of a millstone shall be heard no more at all in thee. And the light of a candle shall shine no more at all in thee. And the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth. For by thy sorceries were all nations deceived. And in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints and of all that were slain upon the earth. I think that was everything. I also want to add this to the end of this video. Now, back in June, I think, June or July, June, I rebuked myself for being a false date setting, false teacher, prophet, because I went against the scriptures and predicting something that is impossible by the scriptures. So if I say something is going to happen and God has already foretold that it cannot happen, you're just false. You're a liar. You're bearing false witness, just a false prophet. So that was my fault, because I did not stay within the parameters of the scriptures. And after I rebuked myself, I want to ask the question, like, have you thought about yourself, that if you were watching then, that you believed that? And I'm being serious, because that was so dangerous. And that's a principle that, if nothing else comes out of that, that we have to forever have that embedded in our heart. You never leave the pages of the scripture. No matter how good or real something sounds, no matter how much fake confirmation you think you have, no matter what, the scriptures are there to keep us in line. So pray about everything I say. Everything. God bless.